Hey guys, it's Paternoster here, and today I'm going to be talking about building a nice, powerful computer that you can stick any graphics card in and play all the newest games at the lowest price. Now, if you are looking at new parts or an upgrade or a completely new computer, you might be overwhelmed by the choices today, and I'm going to try and simplify it or make it at least to the point where you say, yes, this computer right here is going to do me for a long time and it's going to play all the latest game. Now let me start off and really just tell you a little bit about the components, I suppose. When you're building a gaming computer, the things you really want to look out for, and this is the number one item that people always or sometimes miss out on, and that is a graphics card. You can skimp on the motherboard, even the CPU, the RAM, the hard drive, even the power supply, but the graphics card is really gonna run those frames and make your game look great and run at an acceptable frame rate, which is around 60 frames. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. So what I've done, I've put together a little list of things I would get if I was building a new computer. Now what I've excluded from this list is actually a graphics card, which is what I would talk about at the end. So what I've included is an i5. Why an i5? Because an i5 can do your video rendering and your gaming with ease. If budget is tight, go down to an i3. You can still play a lot of games. The RTS games will lag a little bit, maybe even MOBAs will lag a little bit. What else is, we got a case. Now a case is very easy to pick up. You take a shell, it doesn't have to look good if you don't have a big ego. If you want something that looks amazing, then spend all you want. I'd wait for something similar to a good look and easy to build, which is the BitPhoenix Comrade Mid Tower at $65. Australian from PLE. Now the Core i5 was $265, so we've already got $400 spent. The whole total of this build is $800 excluding the graphics card. So next I went with the Gill 16GB 2x8GB DDR4 sticks. You can skimp on RAM. You don't have to worry about it because once you have it in there, I've had my 4GB sticks 4x4 for 4 years now nearly. So DDR3, I've overclocked them, they haven't gone bad, which is why you don't really have to buy the most expensive dual channel, because in gaming wise, and if you want to see some stats, Google it around, I'm not going to go through them now, but the difference in FPS value is marginal if you go from the highest to the lowest. What you just need is at least 8 gigs of RAM, 16 preferred, which is why for $79 you can get 2 sticks of 8. You can go lower to about $49 for 1 stick of 8 gig, and that will do you fine as long as you install an operating system like a Windows 8.1 or 10. The RAM usage won't be too bad. What will kill the RAM is going to be Chrome and games that, might not be very well optimized. Witcher 3 runs great on 8 gigs, and on 16 no problems at all. Next thing is the motherboard. On this one, you can skimp on the motherboard. Ha! What do you know? As long as it accepts the CPU that you have and the RAM, so DDR4. So with the motherboard, what you're going for, the minimal what you're going for is 1 gigabit LAN, 4 slots for RAM, for upgradability in the future. Nothing is ever future-proof. Trust me on that. Except maybe a power supply. Sometimes it could, well, it's just going to last long if you get a decent power supply, which is the one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So with the motherboard, get one, that's got gigabit LAN. Why would you get 100 megabit? Some people now have a good NBN in Australia here, so you could actually make use of it if you have a home server. File transfers would be much quicker. Now the one I've picked out here is the ASUS Z170P DDR4 LGA 1151, which might not mean anything to you, but always match up the LGA number to your CPU, and that means they can fit. Easy peasy, right? 1151, 1151 fits, and 1150 is another one that can fit a different Intel CPU. Why I haven't gone with an AMD is because at this point in time of making this video, no good AMD chip is out, and we're just on that borderline before AMD releases a new one. So watch out, I'll bring you some news of you know, what's happening, want to think about that when it comes out. Same with their new graphics cards. Now, the other little bonus feature of this motherboard is a feature that's future-proofed, and that is USB-C. Yes, it's got one slot of USB-C. So just in case you get a USB drive or a hard drive or memory stick, whichever, you can use it to plug it in. So that is $189. Because motherboards that go with the Intel Skylakes at the moment are a bit more expensive, unfortunately that's the price of it, and we'll have to either pick a DDR3 motherboard and then get DDR3 RAM, and that's where you can save a bit of cost. Look, if you're buying now, do not buy DDR3. It's an older technology and it's being phased out. You might get a few bargains on DDR3 motherboards, but to be honest, it's not really going to save you much in the longer run, because DDR4 is now going to last for the next couple of years. You could wait for motherboards to go down in price. That is up to you, but at $189, it's pretty cheap in Australian dollars. Just keeping in, all these prices are from PLE. They might be cheaper in other shops. There's maybe smaller shops like MSY around Perth, WA. They're usually about $10 cheaper, but just depends on items, sometimes not much at all. For the SSD, I've picked out the Kingston UV400 with 240 gig hard drive for $84. Now, I remember when Samsung brought out their first sort of SSD for consumers that was cheaper than $500, $209 I bought it for, 256 gigs, and I've still got it in my PC 2 years later, and it's great. If you buy a decent SSD, it's going to last longer. If you buy a cheaper one, it's not going to last as long. But the thing with SSD now is that they're so cheap. For $84, you buy this 240 gig, somewhere down the line you can get a 500 gig hard drive for about $120, and so on and so forth. At this price, if it's only going to last 2 years, again, maybe 1 year, wouldn't worry about it for $84 and 240 gig. And it's so easy to just clone the hard drive and move on to the next. For storage, I haven't added any storage. I'm not expecting people to make this a download server gaming, so you just install it on your SSD where it runs the fastest. And finally, now, the power supply. With the power supply, you want something that's going to give you enough power to run your graphics cards and enough power to run all your other components. Now, all these components are low powered. The Skylake is low powered. The SSD takes bugger all power. The motherboard doesn't have any fancy features that's going to drain your power, and really most motherboards shouldn't. It's not overclockable, so you really don't need to worry about your power supply. So, I've gone with the cheapest Corsair one. I have had Corsair in the past, and I found their warranties to be the best. Same with ASUS's motherboards. Their warranties are really good, especially in Australia. Looking at the Australian market, we have very good consumer laws that really allow us to take advantage of when something is faulty, and honestly faulty. So I've gone with the Corsair CX600M, which is a 600 watt, it's in the name, for $114 on special right now at PLE. Now, why I went with 600 watts is because the graphics cards, which I'm going to talk about next, are all coming out as low-powered graphics cards. And what you really want to look at is the fact that you don't need a huge power supply to run the best graphics cards anymore. Back in the 680 series, when you had two of them, you had to have an extremely large power supply for SLI. Same with the 780s, and after the 780s, the 980s, 970s, and now the 1080s, 1070s, their TDP has gone down so low, you don't need a big power supply. Which means two things: lower power draw from the wall, bills if you're still paying for them, which means also less heat, which is something you might not think about, but in WA, for example, it gets really hot in the summer, so making sure that your computer doesn't run hot, especially in 40-degree heat, is actually a thought to consider. Which brings me to the final little bit, which is a good CPU fan. The one that comes with the Intel Core i5 doesn't have a retail in fan box, or it has the really stock standard one, but you can pick one up for $50, $40, $60, and you want to get a good CPU cooler. Like I mentioned before, the summers can get hot. And if you want to go liquid cool, you could get this one. And this Frost Flow was only $59 for the water cool. Single rad, you know, 120mm, 59 bucks. It's as much as an air-cooled one, and the water one will perform just that little bit better. Unless you've got a custom loop, then you can loop your graphics card. So, graphics cards, guys. Here's the thing. Graphics card is the most important part of the gaming PC, and I think if you have the money to spend on, and you've said, okay, I'm allocating this much amount, get the best you can for that amount. Don't go beyond what you don't have, and don't skimp on what you've allocated to the graphics card. My top picks right now is the 1070, the 980 that's gone down in price, not the TIs, and 970 is still very good value, and if you budget goes well beyond $500, the 960 Strix and 960s, 950s are quite good. What I would suggest is if you want to game in, like first-person shooters at high frames, you will have to go for the higher-end graphics card, which also means you probably can't afford a monitor that's got high refresh rate. If you're playing MOBAs or RPGs or anything that doesn't need those precious frame rates, anything below 60 frames like Heroes of Storm, Dota, what else? Even The Witcher 3 will run really nicely on 970 at 1080p and with 60 frames with a few settings toned down. With a gaming PC like this and a good graphics card, you're gonna be under 1,500 Australian dollars, which is around, if I translate it roughly, 1,200 American dollars. But again, the stuff is already cheaper in America, so I'm really aiming here for the Australian market. Guys, 1,500 for just the box might seem like a lot, but you know, it's either you're already in that sort of PC-centric area and you just want to upgrade, and you, for example, haven't upgraded in many years and you just don't know the market, this would be the video for you. Just have a look around. Otherwise, leave me a comment down below, ask any questions. I love answering people's questions about PCs. Guys, thanks for watching. Hope to hear from you, and I'll see you next time when I might put together a video of building the ultimate computer. Ha! Wish I could do that right now. Anywho, guys, see you later.